There are many horrific events that happen every year, but there are those that the public remembers for decades to come. One of these stories is the identity of the Zodiac serial killer. This criminal has become so popular that every year the US police receive hundreds of messages from people who are sure they know exactly who the Zodiac really is. Today, Top F Together with you will figure out what really happened and whether it was possible to find out who is hiding behind the mask of the Zodiac. Back in the past to California. The late 1960s was a hot time in the US. The last chords of the hippie era rumbled, the youth rebelled against the power of adults, the spirit of freedom, saturated with sex, drugs, and rock and roll, was in the air. And it was in California in the late 60s that two of America's most notorious serial killers committed their crimes. But if the commune of Charles Manson was quickly exposed, and its leader, who provided a dubious ideological basis for his crimes, spent the rest of his life in prison, then the uncaptured Zodiac turned into a cult character. First of all, because he never got punished. The Zodiac, unlike most serial killers, was not satisfied with reading reports about his exploits in the press, but actively communicated with the media and the police, mocked the investigation, and tried his best to maintain interest in his person for at least 4 years. The police shall never catch me, because I have been too clever for them. Zodiac Killer. Date places. On December 20th, 1968, a couple of students, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, were shot dead in their car on the shores of Lake Herman. The crime was committed after 10 o'clock in the evening. Witnesses and police evidence could not be found, and the case arose. Around midnight on July 4th, 1969, the lovers in the car were attacked again. This time, the gunman shot Michael Maggio and Darlene Ferret. 40 minutes later, the Vallejo Police Headquarters received a call. The caller confessed to the crime and said that he was the one who killed those guys last year, clearly alluding to Faraday and Jensen. It seemed to the dispatcher who received the anonymous call that he was reading his statement from a piece of paper. The call was later traced and found to be from a payphone a few hundred meters from Farron's house and a couple of blocks from the police department. However, this time one of the victims managed to survive. Michael Maggio, despite severe wounds to the chest and face, managed to be saved. Zodiac Speaks. On July 31st, 1969, 3 letters appeared in the editorial offices of 3 California newspapers, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner, claiming responsibility for 2 attacks on couples committed on December 20th, 1968, and July 4th, 1969. Each of the letters contained a piece of ciphertext. On August 7th, 1969, a new anonymous letter arrived at the San Francisco Examiner. From that moment began the story of the killer of the Zodiac. In most cases, serial killers come up with creepy names by the people or the press, but the Zodiac called himself that in the message. The letter was a response to the demands of the police chief to the author of previous anonymous letters to provide evidence of involvement in the murders. The Zodiac gave out details that were not disclosed and could only be known to the police. The next day, school teacher Donald Garden and his wife from the city of Salinas managed to decipher the message sent by the Zodiac on July 31st. I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To kill something is the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I die, I will be reborn in paradise, and all that I have killed will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife. Zodiac encrypted letter. Next move of Zodiac. On the evening of September 29, 1968, the Zodiac attacked Brian Hartnell and Cecilia and Shepard, a vacationer on Lake Berryessa. This time, the criminal put on a real terrifying show. He appeared before his victims in a black hood, resembling the attire of an executioner. In addition, the killer was wearing something like an apron with a sign in the form of a circle crossed out with a cross. Zodiac inflicted multiple stab wounds on the victims and then drew on their car with a felt-tip pen the same sign that was on his robe. At 7:40 p.m., he called the Napa County Sheriff's Office and reported the crime. The police managed to take still fresh fingerprints from the tube, but they did not appear in the filing cabinets. The third attack was again only half successful for the Zodiac. Hartnell survived. However, when the ambulance arrived, Shepard was still conscious and managed to describe her killer. On October 11th, an unidentified passenger shot and killed taxi driver Paul Stein in San Francisco. The killer stole the car keys, the victim's wallet, and tore off a piece of the deceased's bloody shirt. 3 teenagers witnessed the crime. They managed to call the police even before the perpetrator left the car. A couple of blocks away from the crime scene, the officers met a white man who matched the original description given by the witnesses, but the troopers only asked the oncoming man if he had seen an armed criminal. He allegedly showed them the direction in which the killer had fled. Later, there was evidence that in the police orientation, the alleged killer was listed as black. This allegedly happened because of the dispatcher who received a call from witnesses. He mistakenly told the patrol that the criminal was a black person. This was the last murder that investigators officially linked to the activities of the Zodiac. On October 14th, the Chronicle received a letter from a maniac in which he stated that he had killed a taxi driver and attached a piece of a shirt taken from the crime scene to the message. The show goes on. In the letter, the Zodiac said that he now intends to attack the school bus. He allegedly intended to shoot the wheel of the car and then shoot the children running out. However, nothing of the sort happened. Later, a man who introduced himself as Zodiac said that he would call the Oakland morning TV show if lawyers Francis Lee Bailey or Melvin Belly were there. The latter came to the show, and the call actually took place, but, as it turned out later, the viewer who introduced himself as the Zodiac was a patient in a psychiatric clinic. On November 8th, the Chronicle received another letter that was only deciphered in 2020. In it, the Zodiac said that he did not call the TV show studio. The next day, in a new letter, the maniac described his meeting with the police after the murder of a taxi driver. "Who are you, Mr. Zodiac?" In 1970, the Zodiac wrote several more letters, one of which promised to blow up a school bus. In 1974, he took on more crimes and claimed to have killed 37 people. After that, the letters from the elusive maniac stopped. The main and only official suspect in the crimes of the Zodiac for many years remained Arthur Lee Allen. He was detained several times for harassing teenagers, and in 1969 he was held in the Zodiac case, as he lived just a few minutes' walk from the scene of the murder of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. In 1972, investigators searched Allen's trailer, but found nothing linking him to the Zodiac murders. In 1974, he was arrested on suspicion of a series of murders of 7 girls. After this, the killing stopped, and Allen was sent to a psychiatric hospital, where he spent 3 years. In 1991, with the advent of DNA tests, Allen was taken up again. They found a cache of weapons and a Zodiac watch, which his mother gave him in 1967. Arthur gave saliva samples for DNA analysis and passed a polygraph test. As a result, the man was released, although doubts about his innocence were huge due to circumstantial evidence. Alan himself claimed that he was innocent and gave interviews to the media, stating that he was a victim of political games. However, the surviving Michael Maggio, who at that time was 41 years old, confidently identified Alan from a photograph as the person who attacked him. Everything went to the fact that Alan is still recognized as the Zodiac, but in August 1992 he died of a heart attack. In 2002, a DNA examination was carried out, after which it turned out that Alan's samples did not match the samples that, according to the investigation, the Zodiac had left. New discoveries in the investigation. The Zodiac case remains one of the main police mysteries of the 20th century, and the police do not particularly talk about the details of the investigation. However, in early October 2021, members of the detective group the Casebreakers entered the arena, which includes former FBI agents, police, military, journalists, and just enthusiasts. This group is investigating with grouses, among which, for example, the disappearance of labor leader Jimmy Hoffa. They claim to have finally identified the true identity of the elusive killer, and it turned out to be one Gary Francis Post, who died in 2018 at the age of 80. One of the main pieces of evidence, as in many other cases, is Post's resemblance to a portrait of the Zodiac compiled from the descriptions of witnesses. This time, researchers claim to have found a photograph in Post's archive showing him with scars on his forehead, similar to those of the Zodiac. In addition, detectives from the Casebreakers linked Post to a murder that occurred in the city of Riverside on October 30th, 1966. It was also considered at various times as a crime of the Zodiac. Then an unknown person stabbed 18-year-old Sherry Jo Bates. Moreover, on November 29th of the same year, an anonymous letter came to the editorial office of the local newspaper Riverside Press Enterprise, the author of which confessed to the murder and claimed that it was not the first and not the last. Gary Francis Post at the time lived just 15 minutes from Riverside College, where the girl was murdered. In addition, in 1966, the police found a wristwatch splattered with paint near the crime scene, and Post worked all his life as a house painter. A military boot print was found at the Bates murder site. Post was an Air Force veteran, and the same footprints were found near Zodiac crime scenes. Members of the Casebreakers claimed that Zodiac cryptograms take on true meaning when inserted into them with the full name of Gary Francis Post. The reporters contacted a woman named Gwen, who grew up next door to Post's family in the 1970s and 1980s. He and his wife sometimes looked after the girl and, as she claims, was an abusive husband and taught her how to shoot a pistol. He lived a double life, she said. As I'm adult thinking back, it all kind of makes sense now. At the time when I was a teenager, I didn't put two and two together until I got older. It hit me full-blown that Gary's the Zodiac. Gwen. Former U.S. Air Force pilot Hans Smith said he hid for 10 years an informant who escaped from a gang led by Post. The gang allegedly operated in California's High Sierra region and was making a killing machine out of him. A woman named Michelle, who is in a civil union with Post's son, claims that Gary Francis Post stalked her along with his gang of 3. In addition, she refused to give her last name, as she is sure that even 3 years after Post's death, his accomplices remained faithful to him. The police have so far refused to comment on the new data in any way, citing the fact that the Zodiac case is still not closed. And in general, it seems that representatives of the law have not shown much interest in a new investigation. Moreover, Post had already come under suspicion, but law enforcement officials denied his involvement in this case. How many Zodiacs were there? There were a lot of suspects in the murders committed by the Zodiac. At various times, his crimes were attributed not only to Arthur Lee Allen, but even to Charles Manson and his section. In 2007, one Dennis Kaufman stated that his stepfather was the Zodiac. He told the FBI that he found suspicious objects among the relatives' belongings, allegedly indicating the guilt of the latter. In 2010, investigators denied this version. In 2009, an episode of the History Channel's Mystery Quest suggested that the Zodiac was Richard Gaikowski, who worked as editor of the Good Times counterculture newspaper in San Francisco. Allegedly, his appearance is very similar to the description of the killer, and the police dispatcher who spoke to the Zodiac after the second attack recognized his voice. In 2001, a certain Louis Joseph Myers confessed to a friend that he was the one who committed the Zodiac murders. The man was dying of cirrhosis of the liver and decided to reveal his soul to a friend. There are indeed some similarities with the Zodiac in his biography. However, most of the information was obtained from the words of Myers himself. There are many more similar stories and confessions. Often they are based only on the external similarity of the suspects or the coincidence of some biography facts. The investigation of the casebreakers, sooner or later, may be of interest to the competent authorities, but so far we can only say that the Zodiac case is still open, and whether the elusive killer will ever be found is unknown. Thanks for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and like this video if you haven't done it yet. Also, turn on notifications on our channel to catch all new videos. Bye.